Today I'm going to be sharing 3 of my favorite ground lamb recipes with you, but before I do that, I want to talk just a little bit about some of the tips for cooking with ground lamb. Probably one of the ones that many of you all know is leanness is important. You really want your ground lamb to be lean. You want it to have a little bit of fat in it, but the fat tends to harbor the stronger flavor that some people find objectionable about lamb. So it's important to start with lamb that really is nice and lean. The other thing in cooking with ground lamb is I like a really fine grind to it. And so that's something you might want to visit with your processors about, making sure that the lamb really is a nice fine grind to it. And that is maybe a personal preference of mine, but I think it just makes for a nicer dish if you have a finer grind to your lamb. I use one of these tools like this when I'm cooking ground lamb, when I'm browning it on the stove, and use one of these to be able to break it up. These are a great little tool. You can also use a potato masher. It just makes it easier if you have something like this as opposed to just chopping it with a spatula or a spoon. The other thing in regards to browning ground lamb is it's best to do it over medium heat. Sometimes we get in a hurry and we tend to just crank the heat up, and lamb doesn't need a lot of heat. And so any of these dishes that I'm going to be sharing with you today, where we're going to be browning ground lamb, you want to make sure you're doing it over a medium or medium-high heat as opposed to high. So we'll take a look at our first recipe. And what I've tried to do is I've had to do some of the prep in advance because this clearly is not the Food Network kitchen. But I've pre-cooked some of the lamb and done quite a bit of prep on the dishes to be able to share 3 of them with you during this amount of time. So the first one we're going to talk about is a ground lamb gyro. Gyros are very popular. Many people enjoy them, but they're often made with either leg or shoulder that has been compressed and seasoned, and it takes much longer to cook when you're using something like that. Where if you're using ground lamb, you can easily have this put together in 20 minutes. So it makes a very quick and easy dinner for just about anybody to be able to prepare. But oftentimes we don't think of ground lamb in a gyro, but it's a great way to use ground lamb. And that's one of the questions that I get very often from people is, oh, we don't know how to use all of that ground lamb that comes when we have a lamb processed. And so hopefully you'll want to try, if you like gyros, you'll want to try this. So I have my ground lamb that has just been cooked and seasoned. And this has been seasoned with garlic, oregano, and basil. And those are 3 very common seasonings that go very, very well with lamb. So I have my ground lamb, and then I also have a couple bread options. The recipe that you're going to be getting when you download the packet from the session is for my homemade flatbread. And this is a yeast bread. It's not difficult to make. It takes a little bit of time, but it's my own homemade flatbread recipe. And it's a little bit similar if any of you have eaten it at the Olga's restaurants, where they have a flatbread that's filled with a gyro type of a mixture. This is similar to that. And so I'm going to put one of those on my plate. We like cheese on our gyros. That's not traditional. But again, the flavor profile that you're going to find in this recipe is quite similar to what you would find at Olga's. And so I'm going to put a slice of cheese on here. You can use Monterey Jack. I think that's something that we really like. Havarti, you could use mozzarella. You don't even have to use cheese, but cheese happens to be one of my favorite foods. So I'm going to just put my ground lamb mixture down. Put that down over the cheese, and if you put the cheese down first and you put the ground lamb on top of it and it's hot, it kind of melts in to the cheese and helps to be able to stick together a little bit better. Then the sauce that I'm using is simply plain Greek yogurt. Sometimes I make a tzatziki sauce that is Greek yogurt, garlic, grated cucumber, but lots of times I just use the Greek yogurt. So we're gonna put some of that on. And the Greek yogurt also helps to kind of hold the lamb in place. You'll find that this is going to be messier to eat than a gyro with slices of meat. But if you kind of construct it this way, it's really not that bad. So then I like to include some sliced tomato, and I love some pieces of onion. Some red onion is really nice. And if you like, you can put some shredded lettuce on the top. If you like a little extra spice, like I do, I just take and sprinkle this mixture with a few dashes of red pepper. Then you're ready to roll it up, and it's ideally your bread should be warm, and it will be pretty pliable, and it will roll better. So you can see this is what a really quick and easy ground lamb gyro looks like. Now, if you want a convenience option and you don't want to make your own bread, you can buy a pita bread like this at the store. You see it in all of the bread departments and sometimes along the deli counter. And this is very easy to use. You take that same mixture, you just cut the bread in half, open it up and make a pocket and put your same ingredients down in. So that's a super quick and easy way to make a grounded lamb gyro. The next recipe that we're going to take a look at is shepherd's pie. And shepherd's pie is a very traditional use of ground lamb, but I find it's one that people don't make very often. And again, there are some shortcuts that you can take when you're making shepherd's pie. So this is a ground lamb mixture that has been browned on the stove, and it's been seasoned with rosemary, thyme, garlic, and a little red pepper. Those are the seasonings that have gone into the lamb that's been browned. And then I make a vegetable mixture separately. You'll see in the recipe, it's carrots, chopped carrots, onion, celery. I also put some chopped mushrooms in this. I love diced mushrooms in here. And if you dice them up fine enough, you can get a nice flavor, but you're not getting big chunks of mushrooms, particularly if you have somebody in your family that maybe is not a mushroom lover. But I think the mushrooms add a really nice flavor to this. You could also add peas to it. Peas are traditionally added to shepherd's pie, but there's something that we don't particularly care for at our house, so I don't put the peas in it. But the sauteed mixture with the vegetables and the lamb goes together pretty quickly, and you're just adding flour as a thickening agent and some beef broth in with the lamb. Similar to how you might make sausage gravy, where you brown the sausage, you put the flour in, and then you add your liquid. That's the same thing that you're going to do in this recipe. Create that thick lamb seasoned type of a gravy, and then you add the sauteed vegetables to it, put it in a greased baking dish, and top it with mashed potatoes that have been stirred together with an egg. You want your mashed potatoes to be either room temperature or a little bit warm when you put your egg in, so that you can really incorporate it well. You can use leftover mashed potatoes, which I often do for this recipe, but you can also use instant mashed potatoes. You can whip those up very quickly if you don't care to make your own mashed potatoes. The other option is using a package of prepared mashed potatoes like you would buy in the refrigerated section of the grocery store. And this recipe that I prepared today, I used a package of the Bob Evans mashed potatoes, just so you could see what this looks like. So you take that egg and mashed potato mixture, smooth it over the top of your lamb and vegetable mixture, and then I take a fork, the tines of a fork, and just go back and forth to rough up the surface of the potatoes. And that will give you kind of some little crispy edges and a little bit of texture that browns very nicely. Then you put just a little bit of melted butter over it, stick it in the oven, and you've got a nice dish. And what I like to do with this, there is a little bit of parsley seasoning the lamb mixture, but I like to also sprinkle a little bit of parsley on the top. It just makes it pretty and just gives a little bit of freshness to it. Now, if you wanted to make this in advance, because there is a fair amount of prep to assembling the dish, and then you bake it for about 40 minutes. But this is something that you can make a day in advance, refrigerate, and then just stick it in the oven. And I'm recently retired in the last year, but when I was working, often I would prepare this the night before, and then when I got home from work, all I would have to do was pop it in the oven and it was ready to go. So we'll take out a serving of this. So you can see you have a nice layer of lamb on the bottom. You get a little bit of color out of the carrots and the celery that have been added to the filling. Then you have this wonderful golden brown top of mashed potatoes. And this is a wonderful dish. This is what we would call the epitome of comfort food. And it's a particularly nice dish in the winter. It's very comforting, and I think you'll enjoy it if you try it. The last dish that we are going to make today see, I had to step away to the refrigerator because I forgot to put something out on my island here. But the last dish that we're going to make today is a Mediterranean lamb mixture served over orzo. And Orzo is a very small type of a pasta. You can use anything in this recipe. You could use a larger pasta, you could use a fettuccine, you could even use rice in the dish, but the traditional complement to this dish is orzo. And if you've never used it before, it's very easy to find in the pasta section of your grocery store. It comes in a little box like this, a pound of it, and this recipe uses about half. The lamb in this recipe is very highly seasoned. And that's one of the nice things about lamb, is it has enough flavor on its own that you can put some pretty hefty herbs and spices with it and really end up with a very nice flavor combination. Lamb's not something like pork or chicken where it's just so bland. Lamb has a wonderful natural flavor of its own, and it can really stand up to some pretty good spices. And we find in other cultures, lamb is served highly spiced with a variety of different types of herbs and spices. So one of the key seasonings in this recipe is a tablespoon of cinnamon. And you might look at that recipe and think, oh, is that right? Did she mean a teaspoon? No, I mean a tablespoon. This gives a nice warm note to the lamb, a little bit of sweetness. We often think of cinnamon as more of a sweet type of a spice, but it can be added to savory dishes, and it's really nice. Oregano, there's a little bit of oregano in there, as well as some coriander and cumin. And so the lamb is cooked up, and those things are added along with a couple cloves of garlic, and you get just a really nice, as the dish starts to cook up, the aroma will come up to you, and it's just really a wonderful aroma. So that's very simple. Browning the ground lamb with some onion, putting the seasonings in it, and then you're going to add a large 28-ounce can of diced tomatoes. Put that in and let it simmer for about 15 minutes. So it really does not take very long to make this dish either. You can easily have this put together in a half hour. You can be cooking your orzo while the lamb is simmering with the tomatoes, and then you'll be ready to go. So I have the orzo that has been pre-cooked that I did just before we started taping here. You can see what the texture, it kind of looks like a cross between rice and pasta. It's bigger than a grain of rice, but it has the taste and the texture of pasta. And so I've cooked this, and then I have stirred a little olive oil into it, some lemon juice, and some parsley. And we find lemon often is a flavor that is very common in Mediterranean cooking. And lemon is a really, really nice complement to lamb. So I'm going to put this out on a platter. This makes a really pretty dish. You could easily serve this for company at a dinner party, and people would be pretty impressed. It's easy, but yet it's really pretty. So I've got that spread out. And then this is my mixture. That is my seasoned lamb with the tomato. And that is just going to go on the top. It's almost the consistency of like a thick kind of a spaghetti sauce would be. Like if you had ground meat in tomato. And then we're going to garnish this with some feta cheese. And the feta gives a nice kind of a salty type of an accent to the lamb. And then the other accent to the dish is Kalamata olives. These are very traditional Greek Mediterranean type of a flavor. And I just take the olives and cut them in half and sprinkle those around. And again, it's a nice accent. It's kind of a little salty, briny bite that you get that is a really nice accent. So that's what it looks like. I am somebody who really enjoys food styling, and I think you can very easily dress up something like this with just a little bit of extra parsley and some lemon slices. I like to try and garnish dishes with ingredients that are things that are already an ingredient in the dish. And that kind of gives people a little preview of what they're going to be getting into. So I do have a little reserved parsley here that I'm adding top. And then I've got some sprigs of flat leaf. I prefer the flat leaf Italian parsley. This is the kind that I grow in my garden all the time. You can buy this in the grocery store just as easily as you can buy the curly type of a parsley. And I like this a little bit better. And then, since we have some lemon in the dish, I have a few lemon slices. And that just brightens it up and makes an absolutely stunning dish. So thanks for joining me today. I hope I've given you some tips to be successful in cooking with ground lamb and a couple recipes that are something that are pretty quick, easy to put together, and wonderful dishes that you can enjoy with your friends and family. Thanks so much for joining me.